And we're live. Hi, everybody. This is Milana Lishinsky. Welcome. I almost never do Monday morning or Monday early afternoon Facebook Lives, but the time has worked out for both me and my guest today, Jeremy DeMerchant. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Milana.
And the topic is really interesting. And the topic is kind of like really a good fit for Monday topic, for Monday conversation, right? Because it's Monday, go sell something, right? You better sell something today. I'm going to sell that house. I'm going to sell that coaching package. I'm going to sell that car. I'm going to sell that consulting offer. I'm going to sell my virtual assistant package, whatever it is you're selling. So if you are watching, you're welcome to say hello. Hi, Jamie. I don't know if you're watching right now, but you are hopefully with us. We are on the East Coast, 1 p.m. New York time. That's how I have announced it, and hopefully you're here with me. Say hello if you're watching, and if you have any questions about selling or sales or any of this conversation that is coming up, it's going to be kind of thought-provoking, because as I told Jeremy just off the record a minute ago, he's like, I'm very uncomfortable with this topic. I am so uncomfortable. I got my comfortable coffee to make me a little bit more comfortable. And we're going to have a conversation about this really, I would say, touchy subject, because, you know, the topic of selling and sales has always been a bit of a taboo. I don't know about you, Jeremy. You have I really feel like you have one foot in the coaching industry. You understand the coaches and authors and speakers, people who sell their expertise. And you are a sales professional. You sell. I don't know if you actually train people to sell. I'm going to ask you what you do, but that's kind of been my experience, is that it's the dream of every coach, author, speaker, expert to have someone else do the selling part for them. So this topic really is something that people are uncomfortable with. I feel like that is the reason why people complain of receiving too many emails. Like, well, I'm always, somebody always promotes something. Well, of course, this is business, but it makes people uncomfortable, right? So I want to explore that today. I want to understand a little bit about, you know, how do you build a business regardless of your sales ability or your like or dislike towards sales? What can you do differently if you are on the not liking part, side of the equation? And so welcome, Jeremy. It's so good to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So Jeremy, your website is called permissiontosell.com. And so that kind of tells me that you absolutely love sales, but what does Permission to Sell stand for? Like, why is your company named that way?
Well, one of the challenges that most people, and especially I find in the coaching space, one of the challenges that most people have is being okay with the sales process. So it doesn't matter how many skills you can learn. It doesn't matter how many practice sessions you do. If you've got something in the back of your head, little voice saying this is bad or this is wrong or this isn't giving value, then you're not going to sell. And you need to first give yourself permission to sell before you can get permission to sell to your client.
Interesting. And, come to think of it, most people who are uncomfortable with the sales process and with the idea of selling, there's something else going on that has nothing to do with business. It has nothing to do with selling. I will tell you a quick story. I was hired as a web designer many years ago, right out of college, when internet was so new that nobody really understood how to make websites, what this internet thing is all about. And I remember doing an interview, there was a newspaper editor, publisher, writers, a whole panel of people who interviewed me. And the marketing director asked me, are you comfortable selling? And I said, sure. I've never done it before, but I didn't feel any fear around it. The first day that I spent selling websites on the phone, I made a decision that I will never sell anything in my life again. That rejection on every call was brutal, and it built that up for me as something that I still say, I don't like to sell. I'm not good at sales, which is why I learned to be much better, much stronger at marketing, so that I don't, but if I know that if I had a better sales ability, I would be so much more successful in business, with relationships with people, right? But, I come from a background of 8 years of bullying, 8 years of teasing, being rejected, not belonging. And so I wonder how many other people have some kind of like childhood traumas, if you want to call it that way, that are responsible for their inability. You had something and you still sell, right? So talk to me about that.
Well, when I was a kid, and I don't know, maybe some people that I went to school with will end up being on this live, but when I was a kid, I was picked on. I was extremely antisocial, and I got to the point where I just didn't care anymore about what my peers thought of me. I worried about impressing adults. And I ended up getting my first job at a convenience store. And it ended up being a sales job. And I remember the first time that from what I consider to be made my first sale, and it was this scratch ticket that came in. It was the brand is called Dooley's, which is the name of a billiards hall here in Canada. And I got really excited because I played a little bit of pool, but I wasn't very good. And of course, I was too young to buy the scratch ticket. I was about 14. But when the first person came in the door after my shift started, I said, "Hey, have you seen this?" And I showed them the ticket. And they bought two. And I went, "Huh, well, that's interesting." And the next person came in. I said, "Hey, take a look. You should buy one." And they bought two. And I realized that my enthusiasm for something can influence somebody's buying decisions. And from that point on, any conversation that I had, I structured it in my head as just influencing somebody else. So it was no longer about whether or not I was going to be rejected. It was, I'm going to influence, and I may or may not get the results, but it's worth a shot. That's sort of how it started. And it basically, I'm horrible socially still. But if anything's structured as a sales conversation in my mind, it goes pretty smoothly.
So as I was listening to, I was thinking about my son who just graduated from electrical engineering major from Penn State. He works at MIT, and like just really his career is taking off. I'm so happy for him and so proud of him. And I remember him saying that everyone I talk to, I convince them to major in engineering. Even if they're not necessarily fully interested in that field, it's going to give them such an amazing foundation in their career. And a lot of the people that I talk to actually switch their majors. I'm like, how do you do that? I can't do that. Like, because I really believe in it. I'm so enthusiastic about it. And they start considering it. And several people actually have switched their major after a conversation with him. So I totally get what you're saying. However, when you're selling something else or someone else's product that you're enthusiastic about, you're just selling someone else's product. Hey, check out that amazing concert. Check out this awesome program or car. But when you're selling your services yourself, suddenly it feels much more uncomfortable. I'm not quite sure. I'm not finding the right words, but how do you sell yourself? Because coaches, authors, speakers, experts who sell their services, their expertise, their coaching programs, they're selling themselves. How do you say, "I am amazing, Jeremy, buy me"? Right? How do you do that?
And the first thing is you need to sell yourself on yourself, because ultimately you are the product, right? Whether you're speaking on stage or whether you're working one-on-one with a coaching client or creating a program. And if it's a program, it's a little bit easier, because if you can create the outcome and you've got an improvement track record, then you're selling the program and you can still sort of mentally detach it from you. But when it's yourself in the one-on-one coaching, you just truly have to believe. And so what I do, and I had a hard time with this when I started as well, what you need to do is focus on getting the right person that you know you can help, right? So often in the coaching space, I think we all know that the coaching industry, people don't, I think the average in the coaching industry is like $27,000 based on a survey done a few years ago. And so that annual income is not great. Now, a lot of people coach part-time, but part of the challenge is people are so focused on getting clients, they don't qualify properly. They say, "I want the sale, I want the client, I want the sale, I want the client." And then it just doesn't feel right. You're not in alignment, right? And so if you shift it to focusing on, I'll speak to plenty of people, but I want to ensure that when I make an offer to somebody, it's somebody I know for a fact that I can help. And you can set the framework. So, as long as you put in the effort, you show up to the calls, you do A, B, and C, I know I can help you. And it gives you a framework that allows you to kind of step into that comfort.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And as I'm thinking about it, your tagline says, "Get uncomfortable get results. So you're totally aware of the fact that most people are uncomfortable. Now, I'm all about simplicity. And so let me just, for people who, by the way, hi guys, I see Kat, Celeste, Kimberly, Jamie, welcome guys. Feel free to ask a question about selling, sales. But I will say that, simplicity is about, yes, you can or you should get outside of your comfort zone, but in the right direction. What if somebody's purely not able to sell, not feeling good, not feeling confident? Should they really dedicate themselves the next few years at improving their sales ability? I mean, how important is it? Can you build a successful business without being able to sell? I guess that's really my question.
And the answer, honestly, is no. However, what we define as selling isn't always correct. So Bob Burg has this amazing quote that he uses, and he says, sales is simply helping somebody figure out what they want and then helping them get it. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it that way, it becomes less transactional. So my strength, my superpower in sales are sales conversations. And it truly is just a conversation. There's some flow to it, but at the end of the conversation, if I don't think I'm the right fit, I'm not going to make an offer. If they don't think we're the right fit, that's okay, right? So if you can avoid being attached to the outcome and just make it about the process, then you take that pressure off yourself. See, you can't control who says yes and who says no. You can improve your skills around conversation and identifying their true need and the challenges that they face and talk about how you can solve them. But at the end of the day, all you can control is the number of conversations you have and how often you work on improving them. But you can't control who says yes and who says no. So stop measuring it. The bank account will measure that for you. But if you say, look, I know that I can book 5 conversations this week, so book them and then see what comes out of it. And if you say out of the 5, maybe you close 1. Great, you want to close 2 sales next week? Well, maybe I need to book 10. So it doesn't need to be this rigid structure that's about, making somebody feel the pain and amplify it. And, all these skills that we learn about traditional sales. It doesn't have to be a chess match. It can just be a conversation.
Yeah. I've had a lot of conversations around sales, actually, with my friend Madeline. Hi, Madeline. I see you here. And I will say I will be a little bit vulnerable here, and hopefully I will speak for other people as well. But I will say that when I start selling, so typically I teach and I train people and I share a lot of value. The moment I start selling, it's the moment, it's like this very clear line in my mind that happens that, okay, I stopped giving value now, and now I'm pushing. So I have that in my head, what's happening. And then if I'm selling from stage, what happens is like I spent an hour or maybe sometimes like 2 days building rapport with my audience and with all these people, and they love me and I love them. We have such closeness and I'm feeling so valuable. And suddenly I feel a moment like I'm betraying them and their trust. Now I'm starting to sell them. Now I'm thinking, oh, okay, so Milana had ulterior motives. She wasn't just teaching me this information. She was building up to the sale. So I have all this crap happening in my head. It's like, head trash that stops me from being successful with this specific topic, with sales. I know I'm not alone. I'm just being very outspoken about it. But like, how do you combine? How do you do this? How do you move from giving people value and then selling and still feeling good about what you're doing for people?
So can I challenge your thinking a little bit?
Yes, please. I'm here for that.
So when you make an offer, I've known you for a few years now. When you make an offer, I know that it's a solid offer that's going to give crazy value to those people that implement, right? And I feel like you're pretty confident of that as well. And I know there's people in the comments that would absolutely support that as well.
Right.
So I would challenge you that line that you mentally cross when you go into sales is actually still serving, because if you can help your audience get to the next level, then any offer that someone's going to say yes to typically has to build off the level that they're at. So if you don't offer it to them, and it's because you're scared, and this is going to be kind of blunt, but you're kind of selfish because you're worrying about your insecurities and your fear versus helping them, right? You're saying, you know what? Come join this process. I can help you level up if you want to. But it doesn't have to be, hey guys, buy my stuff. It's come along, invite them. Come along for the journey. This is the next stage I've designed to help us get to this result. You're welcome to join. Right, so if you shift it, because I think that if you don't sell, you're taking away an opportunity for people. I've seen a lot of scenarios where coaches, they'll talk to somebody and they think, well, I think this person's broke, so I'm not going to pitch them, or I'm going to offer them my $47 training. You didn't even give them an option, right? Like I have a rule when I work with clients, and I say, typically have 3 levels of offerings, but the top one, I want you to always go for the highest level of support that's appropriate for the person. It doesn't matter how much money you think they have or don't have. And then give them the opportunity to say yes or no.
Okay, so I have something to throw in the mix in this conversation. I mean, I told you guys this is going to be eye-opening, thought-provoking, vulnerable, because I'm in the place where I would love to be better at sales, but I haven't gotten that. I've been in business for 17 years. I've mastered many things in the business, running the business. Sales is not one of them. So here's one. You're saying that you are depriving somebody of an opportunity to grow. And I agree with that. Here's the challenge for me. I'm only responsible for my actions. So I will say, yes, I will provide you with everything you need to succeed. But then there are all these variable factors that I have no control over. Will you implement? Do you have, great communication skills? Because that's part of what is important to implement this successfully. Are you somebody who builds rapport with people easily? Because I'm making that up, for example, but I don't know what background that person, the people in my audience have. So I can never guarantee results 100%, which makes me hesitant to say to them, listen, this is your opportunity to grow, to succeed. What if they get my offer, and then there's some missing things within the bigger picture, and they don't get the results? Holy cow, I'll feel horrible, right? So that thinking doesn't allow me to sell with confidence, because I cannot be responsible for your results because I don't really know you.
Right.
That's what, and I think that's true for every coach.
Absolutely.
I can coach you, but I don't know you. Maybe you're a lazy bum and you're not going to do anything I tell you, right? So that's an example. I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah. So first, I want to acknowledge you for being vulnerable in front of the audience, because I think that's where the really high value happens, right? It's when people can connect, because you're human, you're a coach, and there's thousands, millions of people around the world that have the same challenges. So thank you for
Totally. Yes. I want to get to the bottom of this.
So this is also another issue that I had some challenges with as well. And in fact, I'm in the process of working with a prospect, and she said, I will do this if you can guarantee me this result. And I went,
there you go.
And I said, I can't. And we were talking about mapping out and optimizing her whole sales process. And I said, I can't control the Facebook ads because I'm not a Facebook ad guy, right? There's that variable that is out of my control. So I said, look, this is what I can guarantee. Out of the leads that come to this point, this is what conversion I can help you get to, as long as you continue to implement, you have the conversations, you send me the recordings, and then I can give you feedback. As an example, and this isn't the entire conversation I've had with her so far, but if you set the framework, the expectation around what needs to happen, then for me, that lets me move forward with confidence. So if I say, and I'll give you an example. In my first year in business, there were 2 ladies that hired me as a sales coach. And they hired me on for 3 months. One paid up front for 3 months, one paid monthly. And we started working together. And I kept trying to push them to get uncomfortable. And there's just one key piece. And it actually had to do with putting videos on Facebook. And they just refused to do it. And I said, okay, well, if you're not going to do that, then you need to either do a webinar or something that spreads the message, some type of marketing piece. And they just refused. And so first I went, oh, okay, well, that sucks, right? And they did not, and I'll be clear, my audience is on here too. They did not get the result that I wanted them to get, that they wanted to get. It wasn't my fault. But I looked at that and said, okay, what can I do differently now? And in talking to my coach, he said, it's time to raise your price. And I went, ooh, what?
Not your initial reaction to something like that.
Oh, exactly, right? And so he kind of pushed me a little bit and said, look, make your program a year long, put the price up to where it really should be, and I want you to just focus on seeing if people are the right fit. And so I did. I nearly doubled my price and then made it a year-long commitment. And then out of nowhere, this lead came in from who's now a former client of mine, good friend of mine, and potentially business partner going forward. He came out of nowhere from listening to me be interviewed on podcasts. And he just said, hey, I think you're the coach. I've listened to 200 podcast episodes. I think you're the one I want to connect with. And I went, oh, okay. And so I said, well, this person came out of nowhere. So if I go for it and I fail, I've got nothing to lose. So I'm going to trust the system, trust the structure, and do it. And so we ended up talking for about 2.5 hours in this hour-long strategy session. And at the end, I made the offer. And I said, the investment to work with me for the year is, and if you pay up front, you get this much of a discount. And then I just sat back and I stared at my face in that camera. And I sat in silence for, it had to have been like 2.5 minutes. It felt like 20 minutes. But I just sat in silence. And I waited. And I waited. And when he came back, his response was, if I pay 4 months up front, would I still get some kind of discount? And I went, yeah, we can do that. And so the process worked, but the most important piece is that client went from no business to 6 figures in 6 months. And that's not about my process. My process wasn't ever any different from when I work with the other people, but the difference was the type of person I was attracting. And we tend to have these conversations with people that aren't qualified. And so that's what a really good sales funnel or sales process can help you do, is make sure that you're talking to the right people and you're not just wasting everybody's time.
Let's talk about that. By the way, I'm watching all the comments. I'm loving it. Madeline says, what if they go to a dental school and they don't open a dental practice? They go back to the dental school and ask for a guarantee. That's a really funny conversation. Jeremy, can you speak to pre-qualifying for softer niches to decrease no-shows for discovery sessions? And that's a question from Madeline. I actually want to talk about this idea of discovery sessions, strategy sessions. Some people call them sample coaching sessions or sales conversations. Like, what's the secret to getting a client from a session? And let's address Madeline's question as well, how to pre-qualify, make sure that you're talking to the person who is primed to buy, because I know a lot of coaches will waste their time,
right? Because
they're so given and they want to help people and they're just seeing possibility and opportunity in everybody. They will give their time generously and then will not get a client. So talk about pre-qualifying and specifically to, sample sessions.
Sure. So the first thing is that I use 2 pieces to qualify. One, I use an application. So anybody that jumps on a strategy session with me, I make sure that it's structured as a strategy session so they're aware of what it is. And there's an application or a questionnaire. I shouldn't say an application. It's a questionnaire. So I've got some information in advance.
Do you ask them, how much are you making? What's your salary? Is that one of the questions?
No, what I ask them is, how much do you typically invest in your personal professional development annually?
In a year?
In a year, yeah.
Okay.
So that gives me a kind of a feel, right? And then I can build from there. Because if they go on and say 0, then I change the focus, and I just, usually I still have the call, because the other qualifier I use is actually I charge for it. So if they're not willing to invest in it, then, well, that's easy. I just don't waste my time, right? I would love to help them with value, and that's what Facebook Lives are for, right? Jump on and see this stuff, and this is where I can give value to a lot of people. But in a really focused strategy session, my normal rate for them is $147. And this is how I do it. So you guys can borrow and mirror this. I say the investment for the strategy session is $147. If at the end of the session, you don't feel you got your value, I will refund the money before we're off the call. And this is what this does. It feels like a guarantee, and it is, but it also ensures they show up, because if they don't show up, we never get to the end of the call. So if you don't show, I'm not pushing the refund button, because that was still my time. I didn't have a chance to earn your business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love that.
And to address Madeline's question, the questionnaire is really valuable to get a feel for it, but I find that a lot of people don't like this, but I think the financial qualifier is a really big deal. Now, it depends on your market as well. So like B2B, VP of something is not going to pay to sit down with you for half an hour. They feel like you're going to sell them, so just make it a sales conversation, right? But in the coaching space, if somebody's looking for some form of healing or some of those softer areas, I think it's important to position it as some kind of qualifier. So my questionnaire is a questionnaire. I don't really call it an application, but if you say apply for a strategy session with me or a discovery call, then I think that changes it. And then if you truly build it into your system so that you can decline, say, I'm sorry, you don't qualify right now, here's a link to a blog post that might help you. Right? So
you still give them a resource.
Yeah, because you don't want it to make it feel like a breakup. Right? This is the biggest challenge with the sales conversation where somebody says no, whether it's you or the prospect. It feels like a breakup. And so we want to avoid that. Like if I don't feel like somebody is emotionally to the point of saying yes or no in the sales process, I don't pitch. I say, you know what? I think we need some more time. Let's book another session. Because I don't you wouldn't propose to somebody if you're not pretty sure they're going to say yes, right?
Oh, I like that. You wouldn't propose to somebody that you don't feel almost confident that they're going to say yes. How does that translate into selling? Tell me again. So you wouldn't have a conversation with somebody who is probably not going to buy.
Well, you wouldn't pitch. So you could have the conversation. So if somebody buys a strategy session, I'm going to give them an hour worth of value. And the biggest difference, in my opinion, between strategy sessions and discovery calls are, I'm going to help you develop a strategy. You're going to walk away with something you can use no matter what your decision at the end of the call is. Mm-hmm. Either way, you're going to be happy that we met. You're going to have something valuable, and you can go off on your own. And I'm good with that. Because at the end of the day, if you can go and implement, well, actually one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to go and implement, get crazy results, and come back and thank me. Or two, you're going to try and implement, you're going to struggle, and you're going to come back and ask for more help. Right? Because to your point earlier, I can't control what happens after that, but I'm there for support, right? But if I get to the end of the call and I can kind of feel emotionally like if we're jiving, if that connection is there. Mm-hmm. I've been on the phone with somebody for an hour, and it's not like, if we don't feel like we're about to become best friends, or there's something just that really irks me. Now, if it really irks me, I actually might just say, you know what? It was great chatting. I hope this strategy was useful. I don't think we're the right fit to work together right now. But if you want to reach out in a few months after you implement this strategy, I'm happy to chat again. Because at the end of the day, when you're coaching, especially one-on-one, you're spending a lot of time with this person.
Right. You're getting close.
Yeah. So don't do that with somebody that you don't like. Right? You don't have to tell them you don't like them, but it's got to feel good. And if you do think you're the right fit, but you don't think they're quite there in that decision-making process, they're still asking questions, and you feel like there's just too many hurdles between you and the yes. I don't want to pitch now because my 60 minutes is up and risk losing a potentially really valuable relationship for both of us.
Right.
So, you know what? Why don't we book another session? I want to give you something to do, and I'm going to come back and analyze it, and we'll talk more about the strategy. Some easy lead in so that the next step for them is to come back and talk to you.
Right.
Okay, so I won't pop the question until I know that they're going to say yes. So I'm pretty confident.
So let's say that you successfully, thank you so much for sharing your strategy, by the way. I have known about strategy sessions that you charge for. A lot of people don't like that idea because it's uncomfortable selling a sales conversation, right? But let's say that you got somebody on the phone and they're talking to you, or maybe on Skype or on Zoom. What would you say, what's the secret to getting a client from a session like that? because a lot of people will spend a lot of time educating them. Like I tend to do that, right? So I'll get on the phone and I'll be very nurturing. I'll ask them, so what are you trying to achieve? What's been stopping you? What's the problem? Many times I'll start giving the answers, leaving them satisfied that they can now move forward, right? And some people will teach and give away too much information and overwhelm the person. Like, what is the secret to doing it in a way that still feels good to you and valuable, but also moves them towards the sale?
So the reason why I structure my strategy sessions the way I do, so that there is value delivered and they pay, is that I don't have to put that blocker on myself. I don't have to think about, oh, is that too much information? I'll just give it to you. Because the reality is, and actually this is a part you want to be careful of though, in a 60-minute conversation, or some people do 45 minutes, if you just info dump over and over and over, you're just giving them a pile of information and it's just going to overwhelm them and they're not going to do anything. So I like to stick to identifying exactly what the gap is in their business, what's gotten in the way of them getting there, and figure out what I can do to help them bridge it. And if there's some strategy that I can give them now, I'll do it. And if there's not, if it's an accountability issue, then I'll say, look, you know what? It looks like that you've got everything you need except someone to hold you accountable. Now, I can be that if you want, or there's other options. Tell me why you think you and I would be good accountability partners. They say, oh, well, you would be able to support and help me focus. And then I'll say, great. Do you want to learn more about how people work with me? Yes. And then you can go into the pitch. Right. But you're inviting them along, right? You just got permission to sell to them, right? So they just say, yes, tell me more about your program.
Awesome. So I'm here with Jeremy DeMerchant of Permission to Sell. We have more to come. I feel like I'm about to go into a commercial. I want to talk about how selling and sales translate between platforms, because everybody is different depending on the platform. I am much better in writing. That's why my email marketing is stronger than selling on the phone or from stage. There's certain things that people do better than others. So I want to talk about the different platforms for selling: stage, webinars, videos. There are video sales letters. There are written sales pages and sales letters. I want to talk about that. And of course, I want to make sure that we leave people walking away with specific tips that they can start really getting better at sales, even though they may not like that idea right now. But what do you do for clients? What do you do, Jeremy? What is Permission to Sell?
Well, ultimately, I help people increase their sales and revenue. That's the kind of the core of it. Now, what that normally translates into is helping them improve their sales conversation or helping them optimize their sales process. So, for example, all the time I hear coaches and other online marketers say, oh, my funnel's broken, it doesn't work. Well, there's a pretty good chance your funnel's not broken. All the pieces just aren't working in the right order, right? Or something's not working the way it needs to. And so that's where the platform, for example, actually has a big impact. So one thing that I do is take people through a process where we look at what they have and we look at the data. We let the data tell the story. So, for example, you just did a launch not too long ago, right?
Yes.
And so you have data, because I know you collect data. You've got data on things like Facebook ad click-through rates, landing page opt-in rates, how many people showed up to a webinar or a live, how many people stayed till the end. Like, this data is pretty typical. And so we take that data, and when I work with clients, I go a little deeper and use some other software to get more data. But ultimately, we figure out what that story is telling us. And we look at that client journey as a story. Great, client went here, and they went there. Oh, they stopped here. How come? And what can we do to change it? So if you look at it like a story and focus on, okay, where are the holes in this plot? What can we change and tweak? And pick out those spots. So, for example, webinars, really popular still. And there's an ongoing challenge with having people show up, right? I think the average is like 20 to 30% will show based on register, right? And there's ways that you can improve it, but we want to focus on, okay, what do we think will make a difference? And so we come up with a hypothesis that we think can improve this, and then we go and test it. And so, I love that
you said that it's a hypothesis. It's not a guaranteed improvement. It's something that you test.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody really knows for sure, but you understand where to get started.
Exactly.
And which points to modify.
Exactly. And, in reality, most people, if they take a step back and look at the overall picture of their sales process, they can say, like, okay, I think if this headline was catchier, more people might read further down the page. And I'll give an example. I co-founded a software startup back in September, and we just threw up a landing page, and I didn't really think too much of it. It was we were going through an accelerator program, and we couldn't figure out why nobody was opting in. I thought, come on, like I know this stuff. What's the problem? And then I looked at one of the softwares, and it's called Hotjar. It's a free one you can put on your website, and it shows you with a heat map where people view on your page. And I saw when most people were coming on mobile, but when they got there, the text wasn't aligned properly for mobile, and they never got past the headline. They just closed it. And I went, oh, nobody even knows they can opt in. No wonder nobody's opting in. So then we had to change it and then go back and reset everything.
That's the beauty of metrics and analytics. Another one of my favorite things. Not. I'm curious about something. There is a certain simplicity in selling, in sales, because if you look at it from this perspective, it seems very simple. A single conversation can turn into a new client or into a sale. Just go talk to people. It's the fastest and easiest ways. One of the easiest ways to get a client is just talk to people. Bypass all the techno, mumbo jumbo, all the funnels. You don't need to know marketing. You don't need to know advertising. Just go talk to people, right? So there's simplicity in selling from that perspective. However, when I think about it a little deeper, then I start coming up with things like, well, there's actually 3 layers to becoming great at sales. And I would love for you to hear that and maybe either simplify it or maybe there's something I'm missing. But there's 3 layers. There's the most obvious layer is that you need a sales technique skill. Like you need techniques for selling. Like you need to know when to say something, when to hold back. You need to know when it's okay to start pitching, when it's not, like which words to use, like the sales techniques specifically. Then if you go a little deeper, then the next layer is your soft skills. Are you likable? Do you have charisma? Are you good with people? Are you just comfortable building rapport with people? Because you can't sell until you have rapport, right? And then there is one layer below that, even deeper that, and that is, to me, healing whatever trauma has caused you not be good at selling. It could be fear of rejection that has been caused by something that happened to you in your childhood. It could be low self-esteem, that you don't see that you're worthy of, being hired for whatever service you're selling. So there's these 3 layers that I'm starting to see. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? It no longer feels simple to me.
Well, you're right in some ways. So I would challenge anybody that's nervous about having the sales conversations, forget about the skill. Because the idea of sales skills seems like this huge mountain that you have to climb, and you don't. Focus on the soft skills, connecting to people, asking questions, listening to what they're looking for, ask more questions to get clear on the reason why. And then if you can help them, invite them to let you help them. Right? That's the simplest. But you're right. There's people that almost everybody has some kind of negative experience with sales in the past, or some type of rejection, right? And that might not even be from sales. Like for me, I had rejection issues, as I mentioned, from being a kid, right? And I think I can't get deep enough into the mindset to like heal these traumatic challenges. Although I do work with a lady, her name's Toni Marie Tori. She is a hypnotherapist and licensed in about 7 different expertise, and she actually has done some sessions with me, and it can help, right? So there are ways that you can resolve those things, but on the surface level, if you just know that if you have your client's best interest in mind, then you're not going to feel the way you might have if it was, you went and bought your first car and the sales guy was pushing, or I'll say the encyclopedia salesman, because that doesn't exist anymore. The encyclopedia salesman that showed up and jammed his foot in the door and pressured your parents to buy this huge set because it was going to help you be smarter as you grew up. And maybe your parent, your mom, she got upset, and Whether she said yes or no, it didn't matter. It was still a negative experience being a child in the next room, let's say.
And some people are more sensitive to rejection than others. Like there may be 10 people being rejected, but 8 of them will go on and still do the sales and they'll be okay. And then there'll be 2 that it will scar them for the rest of their lives, right? So it also depends on your personality.
Exactly. And I think for me, the challenge was, how do I separate myself as a person from the offer? Right? Because what they're saying no to is either having the sales conversation or the offer that you pitch, right? They're not saying no to you as a person. They're not saying, hey, Melania, you're a horrible person. I don't want to talk to you, right? Like, no one's going to say that to you.
What I think about at that moment of rejection is like, I didn't do a good enough job showing them that I can help them.
Right.
So I immediately put that blame on myself.
And you know what? And that is okay.
Okay.
Because that inspires you to improve your sales skills for the next person. Right? But that's not about doing anything negative to them. So if the rejection is purely about, I don't want to be offended, then you're personalizing something when it's just a rejection to the offer. I got a message this morning from a company saying, we're not going to move forward with it. And that's it.
Oh, don't you feel like you're a failure, Jeremy?
Honestly, so what I did do, because I'm still human, right? I jumped on the treadmill and listened to some Tony Robbins and refocused. Like it still affects me. I'm not, I'm not impenetrable as far as the negative self-talk. We all have that. Right.
We do that a lot.
Yeah, but if you focus on, like, the rejection wasn't me. The rejection, my suspicion with this particular client was probably that what I quoted for what he wanted was probably more than him and his team wanted to invest, which is okay, right? Because the truth is, he was saying no to that offer at that price point at that time. Period. I can still go by a store and I can buy something if I wanted to, and he would happily take my money and we would probably joke around. He doesn't dislike me. It's just not the right time, not the right price, right?
That's true. Kimberly's asking, is it possible to outsource sales for a coach and a service-based business? Could hiring someone to do sales for us work? Of course, that's what I started with, right? That's the dream of every service professional, to have someone else do the sales part for them. How do you see this? I mean, there are companies that will do that for you, right?
Absolutely. And the answer is you absolutely can. However, no one's going to sell your service as well as you do, because you believe in it. You designed it, you created it, you know the impact that it's designed to make. You can tell somebody that, but they don't really get it. And actually, for a while, I was doing that for people. So I would jump on the phone, have these sales conversations for them, and try to sell their product. But as I started doing it and started struggling, to be honest, what I learned is I need to understand the product as well as they do, or at least as well as their clients would. So I needed access to the program. You need to say, you know what, I'll sell it, but you got to let me in it so I can experience it. Mm-hmm. Some people are like, well, I don't know, $2,000 value. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, move on to the next person, right? But
wow, really?
Yeah. And so, and some people were like, sure, go ahead. And then when my pricing didn't think about how much time I had to do to actually go through the program to get the full experience. The other part, though, was the funnel design. So if you have a sales process in place, and most people in the coaching space that are doing the kind of done-for-you sales team, they have some very strict requirements around what kind of production your funnel has done and your sales process has done before they take you on as a client, because they're paying people to do these sales calls. And they've got great salespeople. They're amazing coaches. I know at least 2 people in the space that are phenomenal at what they do. Mm-hmm. However, if you don't know how your sales process works, or if we go back to the story analogy, if you don't know where the plot holes are in your story, then you don't know the problems that the person's going to have on the other end. And so you need to have people say, well, I have this question about the price, or I have this question about the structure, or I have this question about the duration. If you've never had the sales conversation pitching your own program, you don't know, and you can't answer it. So the first month, if somebody new is trying to sell your stuff, your conversion is going to be extremely low because they're just not ready to sell to somebody who ends up being typically really cold traffic because your system isn't set up and optimized properly.
And is that something you help clients do? You help them fix their funnel? I love that because I think a lot of people need that. By the way, Kat is asking a really good question. You can outsource the sales of your program, but not your one-on-one relationship, right? So that's a tough one for a lot of coaches, when it comes to selling themselves, because what they're doing is they're selling that one-on-one relationship. It's not a program. It's not a product. It's not a training or a course. It's themselves. I remember when I came to take dance lessons at Arthur Murray, they had several instructors. One of them gave me a sample dance lesson, taught me the box, and another one then took me and sold to me the package. One person did not do both. And I remember thinking, that is really smart because I just established this relationship with my teacher. And then this person is the admin/sales. Two separate people makes me comfortable. But if my dance teacher suddenly started selling to me, that would probably make me uncomfortable as a potential customer, probably because of my own sales at trash, right? But what do you think about this idea of selling one-on-one programs or one-on-one relationship-based services and coaching?
Well, it depends, honestly, on your price point. So I have this concept that I refer to as trust and conversion. And as the trust goes up, your conversion goes up, your dollar amount goes up. And you can make a lower level sale with lower trust, but you need higher level of trust for a higher ticket sale. And I'll give you an example. I do have one client that I do sales calls for. And their programs are typically $100,000. And so I had those sales conversations, and I learned, and I was struggling to close them. Some of them worked out, but it ended up being, a 2-month sales cycle. And it was just too long. And we realized the problem was people don't want to invest $100,000 without having a one-on-one conversation with the person that's going to get them to the end result.
Exactly. So what did you do to fix that?
So we shifted it. So I became the qualifier and salesperson, but I didn't make an offer. My position became, I think you'd be a great fit. We still need to finalize it with the person. So what we'll do is, you've checked out these boxes, these boxes, these boxes. The next step is to book a session directly with the authority, and they make the final decision. Does that sound good to you? Yeah, great. And so by then it feels like they're qualifying for the program. They're not being sold. Right? So people love to buy and people hate to be sold. So if you give them a nice, easy process, but also give them those touch points they need, and this was the gap, right? They weren't getting one-on-one attention from the person who was going to be facilitating this $100,000 program. But as soon as they got that, sales started, I don't want to say skyrocketing, but they definitely improved, right? The sales started happening. And so I think that's a big piece, but you can still protect your time. So as a coach and as an expert, your time is the most valuable resource that you have. And so any way you can protect it, the better. So the qualifying will make sure you're not on the phone with people that aren't the right fit. But also if you have somebody do the qualifying for you, they can actually one of the strategies that I've used in my business are if somebody buys my Tripwire offer after they download a free gift, there's an offer on the thank you page. If they download it and they purchase it, we get their phone number. So I've had somebody follow up, say, hey, want to check in. Would love to know what you like best about it. By the way, if you're interested in moving forward, we can give you a discounted strategy session with Jeremy. Now, I got about a 50% close rate on getting that person to book the strategy session because they weren't free. They were discounted. But it does two things. One, it actually places you as a higher authority because they're like, wow, he's a big deal. He's got a team that kind of protects his time. Mm-hmm. But two, it allows that extra step to properly structure that strategy session too. So ultimately, before I get too off track.
Well, no, I love that because it makes me think creatively that usually I look at a salesperson. If you hire somebody for your team, it's the person who gets that final close, right? Mm-hmm. But what I love about that funnel that you changed it where you were not the final person, but you pre-qualified them to the point where they were ready to make that decision. They just needed that last touch with the person. So, by the way, you were selling for the company that I was, co-founded previously and left it a few years ago. But I remember thinking, wait, if we put salespeople in our funnel process, won't it be like a bait and switch? They're going to build a relationship with Jeremy. They're going to want to work with Jeremy, and then some Milana comes in. That's how it felt to me a little bit, like you are the one who they're building a relationship with. So I've always struggled bringing a salesperson into my company.
And I think, you're not wrong. There is that relationship that gets built. But the difference is in that structure is, you were clearly the face. It was clearly your program, right? And I happened to be the person. And what happened is because I was doing those sales calls, I was the person they reached out to when there was a problem, which means there was an extra touch point that you got, right? So it was really valuable. Now, I did build relationships. And at one point, I think I had somebody actually reach out and say, hey, can I work with you? And I'm like, that's not cool.
Why? They need to trust you.
Well, that's it. Exactly. Right.
You, not me. They need to trust you if you're selling for me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's really important. So it's, there was in another group that I'm involved in, there was somebody who said, this guy approached me, said he could give me a 60% close rate on my programs. What do you guys think? And I'm like, no, he shouldn't be promising a 60% close rate if he doesn't know what your funnel is. Like that's just somebody who's, in my opinion, just pitching themselves for the sake of getting a job. Because there's a lot more to it.
Right.
Once upon a time, I thought that I could jump on any call and close 40, 50, 60%. I realized there's so much more, and that process before the conversation plays such a significant role. And even for when we worked together previously, my involvement initially was through a chat box. And I think I went back and looked, and I think there was something like 14% of the sales went through me specifically through the chat box. And even if it was just a quick question answered or some guidance on something, that extra touch point made a huge difference.
Right.
So it gives you the chance to really take yourself out of the system as much as possible so that you can build your business and let some other people fill in those gaps from the customer support. Because a sales role and a customer support role should be very similar because you're always influencing somebody, right? If somebody's upset calling in for customer service, you still need to influence. You need to calm them, build the rapport, build the trust, and then get them to where they need to be.
I stood up to grab a copy of my book. I will say that this has always been my top pre-qualifying tool, because if somebody has not purchased a copy of my book, does not know that I've authored a book, has never like opened and like read through it a little bit, they are clueless in terms of what value I can bring. So I always hesitate to get on the phone with somebody until they actually own a copy of my book, they've invested in the book, they've read a little bit of the book. I want people to know that all my knowledge is here. This was like from years ago because this was published in 2007. But what I'm saying is that this is my credibility builder. It takes so much longer to do that through a funnel and all of that. Like, I just want you to know that I published this book, and that if you don't connect with the ideas in this book, we're not a good fit. Because I don't want to spend time arguing with somebody that passive income is awesome or that, there are ways to leverage your coaching expertise beyond one-on-one, right? Like, I want them to know my ideas already, and I want them to trust me because that, I've authored a book on this subject. So I already want for them to come to the phone conversation with my reputation in their mind. It's like, it makes it easier for me. But those people who actually are great at sales, they don't need this. They can just get on the phone and connect with the person and sell.
But see, that's an assumption you have, right? But ultimately, though, there needs to be a warming up of the audience. So if somebody came in cold, and let's just say I was selling somebody on one of your programs, and they didn't know anything about it, it's going to be a really big hill to climb. And one of my initial clients that I did sales calls for, they had given me leads that had signed up for a free strategy session from an event that she'd spoken at on stage. And so I called and said, hey, yeah, so, you booked your session. And they actually went to the step of booking them, and they still were like, yeah, I think I remember her talking. I'm like, you think you remember her talking? Why are we on this call? Because it was, well, what can she do? And it became a whole conversation about, well, tell me about her products. Well, that's not how a strategy session needs to go, right? It's, Where's the challenge? Where's the gap? Can we fix it? Right?
Right.
And so if there's not that proper warm-up process or that the sales process or sales funnel, it makes it really difficult for the salesperson, for someone else or for yourself.
I remember being in a conversation recently, and the person that I was on the phone with asked me, so Milana, what are you offering? And that question really made me uncomfortable, because I came to the conversation thinking she already knows what I do. She already has seen my videos. She knows that I have all this experience to bring to the table, but she's asking me, what are you offering? And suddenly it put me in the mindset of having to prove myself, which is an uncomfortable place, right? So talk about that.
Yeah, I think I avoid jumping into calls with any assumptions. So for somebody to say, so what do you offer? For me, that's a pretty standard question. Because
Really? Okay. To me, it means that I didn't do a good job of marketing if they're asking me that question. They must have not seen what I'm offering.
Or maybe the question is more about, now that you know more about me, what do you think the best offer for me is? Right?
That's
because
understand. Yeah.
Because we can have all these programs, especially digital programs or group coaching programs, but ultimately, when you connect one-on-one with somebody, you're the expert. And so, if I want to know how to do a summit, I'm going to say, Milana, what do you think is the best program for me to do a telesummit, right? So, because that's your space, one of your spaces.
Right.
And so when somebody says, I need to improve my sales, Jeremy, what do you think that I need? I will say, well, you know what? If you want to get your results as fast as you mentioned, and you want to get this dollar amount by this time, this is the level that you need.
Right. We are running out of time, and there are a couple of things that I definitely want to touch on. So real quick, let's do this quickly. So first of all, Jeremy, what is the biggest myth about selling?
The biggest myth about selling is always be closing. We're trained in all these old school concepts of, you always got to be closing, you always should be selling and pushing. I believe you should always have a call to action, like in emails and things like that. But I like to shift that. My ABC is always be connected. Right? You never know. I've had sales come out of a relationship that started 3 years prior. So always be connecting, not always be closing. Don't pop the question until you're confident they're going to say yes.
I love that, because I actually learned that at one of big names events. Always be closing. Totally. So I love always be connecting. And what is your biggest tip for getting better at sales? If you're a coach, author, speaker, if you're selling yourself, the biggest tip, what can people do, say they're done watching this, what can they do next to really get better at this?
I think just take some time and reflect on how you can mentally separate yourself from the outcome. Don't be attached to that outcome. If somebody says no to an offer, they're not saying no to you. It's not rejection of you. It's saying the offer is not the right fit for me right now at this particular price point, this particular day of the week, this particular weather. There's so many variables that you can't influence, right? So if the answer is no, be okay with it. No, in fact, welcome it. In my calls, I'll say, you know what? It's either going to fit or it's not. And either is fine.
Awesome.
If you have that, go ahead, sorry.
When you pre-qualify people with a questionnaire, one of the questions you mentioned you ask is, how much have you invested into your personal growth, personal development? Is there another question that you feel is really important to ask to pre-qualify to make sure you get the right person on the phone?
Well, actually, you brought up one that I think would be really good, is you can say, tell me about what you already know about what I do. I think that would be really valuable in the scenario that we talked about, but or experience in this particular market. So one of the questions I ask in the new strategy sessions that I set up for the sales funnel optimization is, tell me about the technology you have. And if they say, I don't know, I know it's going to be a tougher conversation. And if they say, I use, ClickFunnels or Lead Pages, and they're in the space, I know I'm going to approach it in a different way. So if it's specific to the industry, that's really helpful to get an idea of where they're at. Because ultimately, you want to jump on the call and be able to go right to where you want to be delivering value and not worry about the logistics.
And the one question that I promised to address for myself, for my own sake, and for our viewers is, how does selling translate between platforms? Let's talk about that, because you can sell from stage, you can do a webinar and sell from the webinar, you can record a video, maybe it's a Facebook Live video, or just a video sales video, I guess. And then there's in writing, you have sales letters, right? all of these are sales platforms. I'm not even sure what I'm asking. I'm thinking, why am I good in writing but not so good on stage? I know the words to use, and yet when I'm on stage, I don't feel comfortable saying them. And I start maybe rambling too much if I'm on the phone versus if I'm writing an email. Like, talk about selling across platforms.
Well, I think that the same challenges or resistances come up in all of them, right? Now, the reality is when you step on stage, people will instantly see you as an authority. That's probably the highest level of impact and authority building that you can have, which means it's also your greatest opportunity to pitch something that's going to be valuable to the audience. And webinar is probably second because you've still got a large group, right? It's a one-to-many approach. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is that if you have that hurdle, you're getting in the way of helping all these people, right? If you've got that mindset block, or you're thinking about the encyclopedia salesperson. The other piece that I think is really important, though, and what makes it different than a conversation. I love conversations because I can ask you a question, you can give me the answer. Right. But with a sales page, a webinar, on stage, you need to write very targeted words. The language has to be very specific for your ideal client. Now, this can actually be good because you know that the people you're going to connect with most are the ones that you've designed the solution for. So you're actually more likely to have the highest level of impact with that audience. Where if you're having a one-on-one sales conversation, technically you can create a solution for anybody if you're going to do a consulting approach. Mm-hmm. But with a pitch from a stage, it's normally a very clear offer. It needs to be clear. People buy differently in those structures because you don't have that same level of emotional connection. Mm. So there's structure components. Webinar offers and stage offers tend to look very similar because it's a one-to-many approach. But ultimately, it comes down to you have to be very specific in the words that you're using. I remember the first event that I did learning how to run a coaching business, and it was, you have to do a 20-minute presentation tomorrow live on this stage, and you need to have an experiential activity, and you have to do a pitch. I went, what? And then the coach mapped out every single stage. Bonus 1, bonus 2. This is the value. This is the value. And the very traditional offer stacking in the online marketing space. But it works because you need something to increase the perceived value, perceived value, that to make people more comfortable and bridge that gap where you don't have that emotional connection quite as much. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Your question?
What's that?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. What I like about what you said is that everybody buys differently in different environments. Some people will respond more to an offer from the stage, and other people will look very skeptically at that. And then they'll go home and they'll receive an email about something similar, and they'll buy from the email. For sure. My favorite way to sell is through a webinar, through some sort of an educational component that comes first. Where I can build value and I can feel valuable, and then connect the dots with something that makes sense to move forward with next. Which is how launches actually work, right? Which is why I love product launches. They've been invented just for me personally. That build up of educating people and really connecting, and then demystifying certain things, and then showing that, listen, if you see it this way, then it's going to be simple. Jeremy, thank you so much. You really, there are a lot of gems that we're going to get as a result of listening to this conversation. One thing I will say is that the simplicity of sales, to me, is still about just focus on connecting with the person and listen to them, ask them questions, have a human-to-human conversation, and see how you can serve them. So that, to me, is the simplicity of sales. You can't do that in every environment, but especially when you're one-on-one, that's how you do it. So final words from Jeremy DeMerchant, permissiontosell.com. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Your audience? Is that all right? Can I give a little gift to them?
Oh, sure. Please do.
Okay. So if anybody watching this would like, so I mentioned I charge for strategy sessions normally, but I made a promise to Milana. She said, "Can you do this huge favor?" And I said, "Oh, fine, I'll do it." So she's fighting for you. What I want to do is, if you're one of the people that say, oh, my funnel's broken, and you want someone to really show you that it's maybe not broken, it just needs some tweaks, what I want to do is, because you're part of Simplicity Circle, you're a fan of Moana, you're part of her tribe, I want to invite you to do a complimentary sales strategy session for your sales process. So the link I'm going to give you actually bypasses the payment page, so there's no cost. This is just value. So if you go to permissiontosell.com/simplicity, yes, just for your audience, I'm not kidding, then this will allow you to skip that payment page and book a session. Now, my request is that make sure you have some kind of funnel in place.
Say that again. Say the URL again, please.
permissiontosell.com/simplicity. Is
that it right there? Does that work?
Yep, that's it.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much. I may actually take you up on that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you guys for all of your comments and questions. Really helped us uncover more gems in this conversation. And selling is something that every business needs to do in whatever shape or form it's done for you. And I love just kind of unlocking some of the things and demystifying some of the things around what stops people from selling successfully, what is behind all of that. And thank you so much, Jeremy. permissiontosell.com/simplicity will give you a strategy session to fix your funnel, or to take a look at what you are experiencing in terms of sales. So
we're going to translate that for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. Have a great day. And thank you guys for watching, everybody.